Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is another thoughts on video. And in this installment, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on the Japanese music artist Yuji Toriyama. Now, before I go any further, I would like to give a special shout out to Ryan for requesting this video. And if there's another topic, film, or TV show that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. Link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, Ryan specifically asked me to share my thoughts on Yuji's 1983 album, Yuji Toriyama. But this is an artist who's done a lot of different albums. In fact, I think he's done I don't know the exact number, but it's definitely at least a handful. And he's primarily known for a lot of instrumental work, with a piano or guitar or synthesizer or keyboard. And the 1983 album, it was interesting. It was definitely an interesting listen, but I would definitely say it wasn't ultimately my cup of tea. I'm not really that big on just straight up instrumental music, at least not a lot what was featured in this album. There were some tracks that I thought were okay, but there really wasn't anything from this album that I thought was genuinely great. But if you're into like city pop or you're into instrumental work, electronic jazz, rock, soul, fusion music, then I think you might get more out of this than I did. So this album from 1983, it features 12 tracks, and so you have the first two tracks are honestly a two-parter. It's a two-parter called Korean Dress. So track 1 is part 1 of Korean Dress, and track 2 is part 2 of Korean Dress. And they don't really sound like they're anything that honestly should be put together. Like, they don't really sound like they are that cohesive to me, the two tracks, except for maybe a couple moments of the composition, in terms of how the notes were put together. But other than that, they didn't really sound like they meshed together that well. But I did like, I mean, I didn't mind track 1, Korean Dress Part 1. I felt like that had some really strong instrumental work. It definitely stuck with me a little bit more when it comes to the instrumentation and the usage of the instruments. Track 2, not so much, except for the stuff that they just kind of carried over from part 1, which I felt was like the better parts of that track. Track 3 is called She's So Shy. Sorry, that title is a tongue twister for real. Um, this one was one of the tracks that I also didn't mind and thought was okay. This actually uses some vocals that were, I believe, created with a computer or some sort of digital uh, um, apparatus or overall approach to create the vocals, because it's definitely not from him. And this had some decent instrumental work as well. And I would say that a lot of the elements of that track were the ones that kind of stood out to me the most, to be honest. She's So Shy. Uh, track 4 is called Brown Doll, and that's another one that I also didn't mind. That I also thought was at the very least decent and adequate enough when it comes to its composition. It was very experimental. There's a lot of sound effects in it like a baby crying and like a light bulb breaking, and or I think that's what it was, or other stuff, and digitized vocals again. Um, that was, I would probably say, my favorite track out of the entire album, other than Nothing to Hide, which was track, I think yeah, it's track 5 is Nothing to Hide, because Brown Doll was track 4. So track 5 is Nothing to Hide. It's another instrumental piece, but I liked the guitar work in that track in particular. And track 6 is called Your Gold Ring. That one was not really much of anything for me. I barely even remember a note from that particular track. I would say that's probably one of the more forgettable tracks on the album. Track 7 is Donna, which to me, there's definitely some more experimental stuff in here that I did appreciate in terms of sound effects and so on and so forth. But it's done in a way that's very, very weird. Like, this is like a song that actually features sounds of sex or like a woman orgasming. And I don't really know if that doesn't really fit the jazz vibe that a lot of these tracks have. It's not really something you can chill out to when you're hearing moaning in certain parts of the track. So yeah, I wasn't really a big fan of that track for that reason. Track 8 is called Daydream. It's another one that's like really short, and I can't really say a whole lot about it. It's similar to Your Gold Ring. I honestly felt they kind of blended together, those two. Track 9 is Stranger in the Mirror, which is another one that I was just kind of meh on. I don't really remember a whole lot. Like, a lot of these tracks just blend together for me in terms of their sound, in terms of the composition. Track 10 is Tono Sequencer, which is called Japanese. I didn't like that one at all. It was only 35 seconds, but I didn't care for it. It was just too experimental for my tastes. And then track 11 is called Angel Voices. It's another one that I'm just very indifferent about, compared to like Daydream, Your Gold Ring, and Stranger in the Mirror. And then track 12 is called Song for You. And that was a sweet a piece of music. Definitely had a nice, chill, relaxing vibe to it. But I wouldn't say that I was particularly that enamored with it either. So yeah, this album is definitely an acquired taste, and I think it's definitely gonna might be a little too experimental and weird for some people. And if you're not really a big fan of like fusion or jazz, this definitely isn't something that's gonna be up your alley. But it was interesting. I'm glad that I was requested it because it, broadened my horizons when it comes to music. It was definitely the kind of music that I don't really hear a lot of. So it was nice to get at least a taste of that kind of music, and that a particular approach for instrumental jazz and fusion music. So, while I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of his self titled album from 1983, there were elements of the composition and the overall structure of his work that had me curious enough to check out some other albums from him. And I found an album that's on YouTube called Toriyama, and this is the album that features what is arguably his most famous song. It was a theme song for a documentary series called The World Heritage. And this album I liked a lot, actually. I'm not really that fond of just pure instrumental music because it just reminds me of Kenny G and Yanni and elevator music and the kind of stuff I'm not really a big fan of. But I liked this album quite a bit. I felt like it had some really excellent and really impressive instrumental work, acoustic guitar work, piano work, synth work, like just a mix of some really tremendous talents that were on display when it comes to Toriyama's talent and this album in particular. And yeah, I really like the Song of Life, which is his arguably his biggest hit. And I liked a lot of the other tracks on it. Like I liked Days, I liked Wind of Phantom, I liked Majestic Shadow. Even some of the other ones I wasn't as big on, I liked a lot more than anything that he did in his self-titled 1983 album. A lot of the music in this album in particular reminded me of the kind of instrumental pieces that you would hear in a Studio Ghibli movie or in an anime. And I felt that that was really cool, and I like a lot of that music. So this was in a lot of ways kind of a continuation of that style of music, which I really did appreciate. And he actually did do some work for some other anime. Like he did some music for Street Fighter 2, the movie. He also did some work for a Final Fantasy concept album. And Final Fantasy, you know, it's a video game series, but there have also been anime, you know, based on the games. And so I felt that that was some interesting bits of trivia when it comes to Toriyama. Um, but even this album is definitely another acquired taste kind of thing. But I would say if you do like a lot of the instrumental work that you hear in like a Studio Ghibli film, definitely give Toriyama a listen sometime because I think there's a lot of pieces there that I think you'll really appreciate from that album. But that's just my thoughts on Yuji Toriyama. And until the next video, I will see you later. See ya.